Okay, today we're going to look at a mini lesson on irony. Irony is one of those tough literary concepts, one of those tough strategies that a lot of people call things irony that aren't necessarily irony. It's kind of like satire, in that it's one of those that's kind of difficult to spot. A lot of people mislabel it. And hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you have an idea about what irony is and how it works, and you'd have some practice at spotting it. So we're going to start with a basic definition, and then we're going to get into the various types of irony. So, irony, the basic definition is the use of words to express something different from and often opposite to their literal meaning. But that can be confusing. A lot of people take that definition and kind of run with it, and it doesn't really make the full picture of irony. So I think the best way to understand irony is a really good example. So this is a great example of irony. This actually came from an article in a British newspaper. By Zoe Williams. And what's great about this is she makes in this article she wrote, she's actually writing about irony and how so many people misunderstand what irony is and how it works. And so she gives this example to kind of show, look, this is irony. So let's read this. It says, if I was having a party and I thought my dad was going to come and he didn't come, that would not be ironic. If, on the other hand, I was having a party and I didn't want my dad to come, and I spent 3 weeks working on a brilliant cover story for why he couldn't come, and then my sister accidentally blew my cover, so I had to invite him anyway, and then on the way here, he got run over and died, that's ironic. Notice the difference, right? This first sentence, I was having a party and I thought my dad was going to come and he didn't. That wouldn't be ironic. Some people would try to call that irony. That's not irony. That's just sad. It's just unfortunate. But if you look at her example of irony with the same party, right? And she'd worked so hard to make sure that her dad couldn't come. And then her sister blew the cover. So she's like, wait, well, great. My dad's coming anyway. And after all that, he died on the way there. That is irony. There's more layers to it, it has more depth. That will start helping you understand irony a little more, but let's get into it a little further. One of the things that makes irony such a complicated strategy is that there are different kinds of irony, and you have to be specific about which kind of irony you're dealing with because it really has a big difference in what we're talking about. So, the first kind of irony, and maybe the most common, is just called verbal irony. Okay? The definition of that is the use of words to mean something other than their literal meaning. Okay, other than their dictionary definition, other than what we're trying to say literally. It's when we use words to mean something other than that. So, a lot of times it comes off as sarcastic. Sometimes something could be sarcastic. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily ironic, but a lot of times something ironic might be sarcastic as well. For example, if during a severe rainstorm you're sitting out at the bus stop and you have a friend that walks up to you and says, "Well, at least the weather's nice today." Um, we don't take them literally. We know that they know that the weather is horrible, but because they say that, we get that that's ironic. Saying one thing but meaning the opposite. The next kind of irony is called dramatic irony. And dramatic irony is the suspenseful knowledge that a character is unaware of. So this happens a lot of times in literature, right? This is where we as the audience know something that a character does not know. This happens in a lot of movies you see, it happens in famous literature, but we're talking about that. The suspenseful knowledge that we're aware of, but that a character in the story is not aware of. One of the most famous examples of dramatic irony is the story, the play of about Oedipus the king. And Oedipus in this story, what makes the story a great story that has lasted the test of time and that people still talk about and read to this day, even though it was written long, long ago, is that this story is full of dramatic irony. I'll give you the short Mr. Singleton version of this because it's too good of a story to pass up. So here's how it goes. There's this guy Oedipus, and as we watch the play or read it, we find out that Oedipus is the son of a king, and when he's a baby, a prophet tells the king that one day his son would kill him and take his throne. So the king of Thebes, Oedipus's dad, says, "Well, I'm not going to allow that to happen, so I'm going to kill my son." So what he does is he gives his son, this baby Oedipus, to one of his guards and tells his guard to go kill his son because he couldn't do it. So the guard goes out into the woods to kill this baby, and the guard doesn't have any a heart to do it either. This guard just decides, look, I'll just leave the baby in the woods. That way I don't have to kill it. The baby will probably die anyway. And so we as the audience know about this prophecy. We know what the king has been threatened with. And we know that Oedipus has been left here. As far as the king knows, as far as Oedipus knows, that's the end of the story. But what we find out is that a shepherd finds Oedipus, the baby, lying in a field and takes him home and adopts him and raises him as his son. So we know that Oedipus is truly the king's son who's been prophesied about, but we're the only ones as the audience that know this. So Oedipus one day grows into a man and decides he's going to go to the big city. He's going to go to Thebes, and we're following along with this. And he sets off to go to the big city. And on his way to the big city, he almost gets run over by a chariot, and he gets knocked off the road, almost gets killed. And this makes Oedipus very mad. So he hops up on this chariot and kills everybody on it. One of the people on that chariot is his father, the king of Thebes. Now, we know that Oedipus has just fulfilled this prophecy that we knew from the beginning of the story. But once again, the audience is the only ones that know that. And it just gets worse and worse. So, Oedipus comes into the city of Thebes, and news has reached the city of Thebes that their king is dead. Oedipus does not put two and two together, and he swears that he will get vengeance on whoever killed the king, which we know is him. And he goes on like this. Some other crazy things happen. He gets into a relationship with his mother, which is really freaky. He doesn't know she's his mother, and she doesn't know that's her son, and it's really weird. It's kind of a crazy story, but what makes the story great is that this whole time there's this tension. There's dramatic irony. This ironic thing is going on that we know something that the characters don't, and that's what makes it a good story. The third type of irony you're probably very familiar with if you grew up watching cartoons, and that's situational irony. Situational irony is when the actual result of an action is not the expected result. When what happens is not what we expect to happen. So, for instance, the best example of this are those Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons from when you were a kid, right? The Coyote would have these great plans for how he was going to trap the Roadrunner. He buys the seeds and sets them nicely on the road as a bait for the Roadrunner. Then he goes up on the hill above and he gets his Acme rocket and he points it and lines it up right at that pile of birdseed. Sure enough, here comes the Roadrunner. Meep meep eats the seed. The Coyote lights that rocket. Now the expected result, everything we know about rockets and doing that thing says that rocket should hit the Roadrunner and the Coyote will finally get his wish. But what always happens and what did we always laugh at as kids? Somehow or another, it didn't work out this way. And who's the one that really the rocket ends up coming after? It's the Coyote. That's situational irony. Another example of situational irony would be like if you were going to go with some friends, you're going to go toilet paper and egg a house, right? And so you're kind of doing this at night and you all pile into the car and kind of nervous and excited. And you're like, we're going to find a house. We got to find a house. And in the rush of it all, you bust out of the car and they say, okay, this is the house we're going to do. And everybody piles out. You start throwing toilet paper only to realize partway through you are toilet papering your favorite grandmother's house, right? And that she's going to call somebody to help clean this up, and that somebody is going to be her favorite grandchild. You. This would be situational irony. famous singer in the 90s when Mr. Singleton was like in 6th or 7th grade. Okay, don't laugh at that, right? Is this lady Alanis Morissette. And she had this song that was famous. You may have even heard of it. It's called Ironic. And a lot of people were really mad at Alanis Morissette when this song came out because they didn't think that the things that she said in there were true definitions of irony, that she didn't go far enough. So let's look at some of the lyrics real quick. She says, an old man turned 98, he won the lottery and died the next day. Okay, we might could say that's ironic, but a lot of people criticize it. Black fly in his Chardonnay. It's a death row pardon, 2 minutes too late. Well, that sucks. And the chorus is, isn't it ironic, don't you think? And we might say, maybe Atlantis. I don't know. It's like rain on your wedding day. Is that really ironic? It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's a good advice you just didn't take, right? Tells a little story here. Mr. Play It Safe was afraid to fly, packed his suitcase and kissed his kids goodbye. He waited his whole life to take that flight, and as the plane crashed down, he thought, well, isn't this night? Maybe a little bit ironic, Alanis. A traffic jam when you're already late. No smoking sign on your cigarette break. 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. It's meeting the man of your dreams. And then meeting his beautiful wife. Isn't it ironic? And a lot of people criticized Atlantis and said, that's not really the definition of irony. Some of those things are a little bit maybe ironic, but most of those things just are unfortunate. So one of the people that criticized her was a comedian named Ed Byrne. That's him right here, kind of a goofy looking guy. And Ed Byrne took some of these lines from the song and added some to them to make them truly ironic. So let's look at some of these good examples of irony. There's nothing ironic about being stuck in a traffic jam when you're late for something, unless you're a town planner. If you were a town planner and you were actually on your way to a seminar of other town planners at which you were given a talk on how you solved the problem of traffic congestion in your area, and you couldn't get to it because you were stuck in a traffic jam, that would be ironic. See, irony has a little bit more to it than what Alanis suggested. Here's another one of his. Rain on your wedding day is ironic only if you're marrying a weatherman and he set the date. A no smoking sign on your cigarette break, that's inconsiderate office management. A no smoking sign in a cigarette factory, that is irony. There's a difference between a coincidence and irony. And what you need to understand is irony has a little bit more to it. There's more layers to it. So, spotting irony is kind of tough. When we talk about irony in an English class, most often we're talking about it as a strategy the author used to communicate their idea as like one of their central strategies. So it's a little hard to spot because it's an overall strategy. It's not something you can usually just see in a sentence or a phrase or by using a certain word. It's kind of something you have to get from the overall piece. Famous example of this is a poem called Richard Cory by Edwin Arlington Robinson, and it was later made into a song by a folk singing group called Simon and Garfunkel. But the story of Richard Cory goes something like this. And what I want you to do is read through the story, pause this, read through the story, and see if you can spot what the ironic twist is in this song. So go ahead and pause it and read through the story. Okay, so hopefully you looked at this. We went through this, and everybody wanted to be this guy, Richard Cory. He had it all. Things were good for him. He looked like he had it all together, right? In fact, it has a line in there to make us wish that we were in his place. And what's the irony here is that we worked and we weren't happy and we thought our lives were so bad. And Richard Cory, the guy we thought had it all together, ended his life, right? He hated his own life. We all wanted his life, and he couldn't stand his life. That is a great example of irony. And that's also a common theme that you see in literature a lot. This idea that the people everyone want to be, the people everybody admire, that sometimes they are not happy, right? You can look at a lot of popular music now and a lot of popular musicians and hear them talk about their fame and fortune, and a lot of them will talk about it as a burden and not a good thing, right? And you may be thinking that's easy for them to say because they have it all, right? But that's worth thinking about too. Hopefully, you have a better idea of what irony is all about and how it works and how to spot it. If you have any questions or want more information about irony, talk to your English teacher. It may be me, it may be somebody else if you're not in my class. But think about irony, look for irony when you read things, and make sure that when you're calling something irony, that it's actually irony.